10 CEOs that ruined companies. There's a lot that might go through your mind when you think of the three letters C, E, and O. These three letters, in that exact order, elicit thoughts of the powerful and rich. Some people think of CEOs as business demigods, that they must know something that the rest of us don't. I mean, how else would they wind up in such a high and powerful position? Not only do they wield so much power, but these people are like, wow, I mean, they're really, really rich. Folks who view CEOs in this light might think of them as otherwise infallible, all-knowing, that they must have been born in a different gene pool than the rest of us. On the opposite end, some people think of CEOs as too powerful, too rich, that they must have schemed their way to the top. No one gets that powerful without a little bit of evil in their blood, right? Folks who view CEOs in this light might think of them as the untouchables, and not in a good way. Power leads to privilege, and privilege allows you to get away with a whole heck of a lot. No matter how you look at CEOs, there's one thing we can tell you for certain. They definitely aren't perfect. This list will go over some of the biggest blunders and missteps in modern history. Men and women who had it all, only to fumble the bag. Whether it was offering bread and tomato sandwiches at a festival that never happened, or firing the visionary that would turn a company into the largest in the world. The people on this list either killed off billion-dollar corporations, or did their damnedest to do so. Before we get started, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now, here's 10 CEOs who ruined their company. Number 10, Jürgen Schrempp. Schrempp comes in at number 10 on our list because he ruined himself more than he ruined his company. Don't get it twisted, his leadership saw massive losses for Daimler Chrysler. This happened through poor market research and lawsuits against the company. So, what happened? How did Schrempp go from orchestrating a huge merger to being out of a job in just 7 years? You can chalk this one up to bad communication, stubbornness, or both. Schrempp had a whole plan for Chrysler. He wanted them to use parts from Daimler, which would lower their cost of production, while also making Mercedes more marketable in the States. What he didn't know is that Chrysler had no intention of following this plan. Schrempp, on the other end, didn't care and kept trying to tell Chrysler what to do. Within a year of the purchase, Daimler Chrysler had lost 50% of their market value. While that doesn't exactly qualify as ruined, it is pretty darn impressive. A CEO who's a total fool. Who would have thought? Number 9, Marissa Mayer. How do you go from competing with Google to only being useful to sports nerds' fantasy gaming purposes? Ask Marissa Mayer. She can tell you all about it. Not only did she plummet the value of the company, but she made working there miserable in the process. This would have been hard to fathom when she was hired in 2012 and hailed as the savior of Yahoo. To say there were high hopes surrounding Mayer would be an understatement. And why wouldn't there be? She was one of the earliest employees at Google, so she had a great understanding of the tech world and Silicon Valley. However, her tenure at Yahoo would only last 5 years. She made the workplace miserable, promoting employees to call for her resignation. What was worse were her financial decisions. Mayer decided to buy out all sorts of smaller internet companies, which wound up costing a pretty penny. But instead of integrating these businesses into Yahoo's business model, she simply dissolved them. Talk about lost assets. She was bought out for $23 million, and now fantasy sports players have one of the best platforms out there. Sadly, that's about all Yahoo is good for. Number 8, William Sewell. Maybe you have wondered how people start an airline. Where does someone get the overhead for such an expensive business venture? It's a good question, but a better question may be, how does someone ruin an airline? William Sewell knows good and well how to do just the thing. Following in the footsteps of Juan Trippe, widely regarded as one of the best and most successful CEOs of aviation, Sewell was able to bankrupt Pan Am, a giant among giants, just 1 decade later. How did he do it? Well, he spent way too much money. First, he purchased a new fleet of Boeing 747s, certainly not cheap. As if that wasn't enough, he felt the company needed some help with domestic flights, so he purchased National Airlines. The two purchases together were too much, and the largely profitable Pan Am went belly up under Sewell's watch. Number 7, John Keyes. John Keyes is number 7 on our list because it was inevitable that Blockbuster was going to belly up. It was inevitable, right? Well, not if you hear John Keyes explain what happened. Keyes took over as CEO of Blockbuster in 2007 and could easily have put the blame on his failures on the likes of Netflix and other up-and-coming streaming services. Heck, he could have even blamed Redbox for giving people the option to rent their dinner-time entertainment while picking up a couple quarter-pounder value meals. But no, he put the onus on himself. Contrary to popular belief, Netflix did not kill Blockbuster, said John Keyes. Blockbuster actually had a better opportunity to be Netflix today than Netflix did. So, what happened? Bad financing and bad luck. After the market crash of 2008, Blockbuster was buried in debt and was unable to refinance in time. Keyes meant to finance earlier, but figured he had plenty of time. Let this be a lesson to all you procrastinators out there. Even you could become a CEO who could one day ruin your company. Number 6, Stephen Elop. Stephen Elop has 2 nicknames, and neither of them is very flattering. The man, known both as the King of Thieves and the Microsoft Trojan Horse, was the vice president of Microsoft before becoming the CEO of Nokia. For its part, Nokia was the largest manufacturer of phones in the world when Elop took over. By the end of his reign, Nokia would be sold for an underwhelming $7.2 billion to Microsoft. The whole thing stank of corruption, and Elop is considered to have single-handedly ruined the company. How did it happen? Well, it seemed that Elop never wavered from his allegiance to Microsoft, stopping Nokia projects and instead injecting half-baked ideas into their product lineup. The most glaring example of this is the Windows Phone, a complete failure, and that's being nice. Elop wound up making tons of money off his tenure with Nokia, making him one of the dirtiest CEOs in American history. Number 5, Gerald Levin. Gerald Levin wasn't known as a crook and for the most part wasn't known as a bad CEO. Unfortunately, one bad business decision sank a company that held massive value, not only in American dollars, but also in American hearts. The merger of AOL and Time Warner was a gigantic deal back in 2000, but would prove to be the death blow for one of the biggest internet providers Americans had ever known. Due to the internet financial bubble, the stock of AOL was widely overvalued, which led to the company losing 90% of its value. Levin knew how bad he messed up, and in 2010 was quoted saying, "I'm really very sorry about the pain and suffering and loss that was caused. I take responsibility." Number 4, Carly Fiorina. Fiorina may be remembered as both vice presidential and presidential candidate, but she will most likely be remembered for her time at Hewlett-Packard. While she claims that her time there was a success, it was anything but. In her 5 short years as CEO of HP, the company lost half of its value and thousands of employees. Her first order of business when taking over in 1999 was to try and acquire the company Pricewaterhouse for $14 billion. The problem was, Pricewaterhouse was only worth $4 billion. Wall Street roundly slammed the attempted acquisition, and Fiorina pulled out of the deal, not to be outdone by her own bad ideas. She successfully purchased Compaq in 2002 for $19 billion. Even the son of the founder of HP thought it was a mistake, and the company had to immediately lay off almost 20,000 employees. If there is any indication of how badly her tenure at HP went, it is this. When she resigned in 2005, the value of HP immediately went up $3 billion. Number 3, John Sculley. John Sculley comes in at number 3 on this list for 2 reasons: how bad the company performed with him as CEO, and then how wonderfully it performed without him as CEO. There's a decent chance you were watching this on an Apple product, so you know that Sculley didn't ruin Apple, but he almost did. He is the man famous for firing Steve Jobs and creating an environment of infighting so great that he was kicked out of the company in 1997 by the board of trustees. By the time Apple fired Sculley and brought back in Steve Jobs, they were barely a company anymore. Had Apple not made the move when they did, our present-day tech could look a lot different. Number 2, Ken Lay. Where to start with this guy? Ken Lay wasn't just a bad CEO, but a really bad guy. His exploits at Enron landed him in jail, where he would eventually die before even being sentenced. What did Enron do that was so bad? They lied their behinds off about how much they were worth and left a huge trail of destruction in their path. From overworked power grids to lost retirement packages, Ken Lay didn't just ruin Enron, he ruined the lives of thousands upon thousands of people. So evil was Lay with Enron that there is a feature-length film about it called The Smartest Guys in the Room. If you decide to watch it, prepare to be blown away and enraged. Number 1, Billy McFarland. Of everyone on this list, Billy McFarland had the flame that burned out the fastest. He is also our most recent example of when being a CEO goes wrong. Who here can forget the failing that was Fyre Fest? From the great promises of tropical paradise and Michelin-level meals, to the lineup of bands that would grace individuals who spent upwards of $50,000 for a ticket, everything sure went south pretty quickly. Once people showed up to the island, it was clear that there wasn't going to be a paradise that McFarland had promised. People had no water. Meals were slices of tomato on bread. Instead of luxurious resorts, people were given shoddy tents, which they would have to assemble themselves. Not only that, but all of the musical artists canceled upon hearing about the conditions. The failure of Fyre Fest inspired not 1, but 2 full-length documentaries. McFarland is no quitter though. he claims to still have plans to successfully pull off Fyre Fest. So that's our list. Who do you think deserves to be higher or lower in our rankings? Was there anyone that we forgot? Let us know in the comments, and before you leave, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel.